Hello, everyone. Here we go again. It's great to be back with you. Uh, 2 weeks seems like a forever time. So much stuff is happening and is accelerating in my life. It must be in yours as well because we're entangled together. The Today, you know, we're we're going to be discussing the concept of cosmic harmonies, the musical structure of the universe. And of course, this is a topic that's close to my heart. I did a previous live stream, I think it was called Cosmic Symphony or something like that. It's a different take on what we're going to talk about today, coming from a different angle. As a musician and a composer for most of my life. I'm 77 now, which sort of blows my mind. I began. I explored anything that would make sound or anything that would make music for as far back as I can remember. And at 11 years old, my mother bought me my first guitar from a pawn shop in a little town in the suburbs of northwest London called Watford. I was a military kid. My dad got stationed in England and we moved there when I was 11. That was in 1960. 1960, it took 14 hours to get to England on a twin prop plane called a Goonie Bird. We had to land in Newfoundland to refuel in order to get all the way to England. 14 hours on a plane to get to England. That was a transformational period of my life. I was into all kinds of drawing and painting with watercolors and stuff like that from early on. And at 11, I was also exploring filmmaking and stop motion animation and stuff like that with my parents' Brownie movie camera that didn't have a single frame ability. So I would set this thing up and hit the shutter as fast as I possibly could to get as close to one frame as possible and make these animation movies. My poor parents, I was a visitor from another planet because nobody in the family was anything like that. I can trace my musical heritage back through my mother's older brother, Max, who was a commercial artist. So he went to art school. So there is that sort of connection. As far as musicians, I don't know. I mean, I not in the near family tree, as far as I can see. Further back in the family tree, you see a lot of names, and you get some scatters of pictures of what their people's lives are like, but nothing stands out as a musician who made a living doing that, or many of them, I'm sure, were musicians in the background, but that's not the kind of thing you see in a family tree. It has come out through my sister. One of her children, Amy, is like me. As soon as she was born, she started making sounds and music and was interested in that and started learning music as a very early age. She got first chair flute in high school. She could have gone on to become a professional musician. She went another track. But the same sort of musical gene went through. At 11, my burning interest was electronic music. I had a pretty impressive LP collection of electronic musicians from around the world, where sort of nobody knew who these people were. This is the early days of electronic music, where the only way you could make it is with, big banks of electronic gear with wires that you plug into different holes, and there wasn't any such thing as like a keyboard, which came later. The explosion of electronic music happened with Wendy Carlos and Switched on Bach, which was the first time that a keyboard had been applied to electronic instrumentation. And she was reformatting, major symphony work from Bach with electronic sounds instead. And it became a monster hit, and then we're off to the races. I was making primitive electronic music when I was 11 by messing around with my parents' reel-to-reel tape recorder, recording sounds at one speed and playing them back at a slower speed, and recording the slower speed and playing it back at a slower speed than that. And whatever sounds I was recording would transform themselves into something else. Decades later, as a doctor in a clinical practice, that was the the discovery of primordial sounds, that taking nature sounds and changing their speed. Where you have recordings of people speaking, and you speed them up, they sound like birds. You speed them up, they sound like crickets. You take cricket sounds, slow them down, they sound like birds. Birds slowed down sound like dolphins, and dolphins slowed down sound like people. This concept of sort of a fractal nature of sound through dimensions of speed, speeded up and slowed down, that transforms it. But it transforms it for this part, not for this part. The quantum computer under the hood can continually recognize what's going on without even a stretch. So that became a whole thing of, how can we rescript the subconscious mind with positive statements and speak straight through it to the subconscious mind by simply altering the speed of my recorded statements so that it bypasses the executive secretary in my brain and travels straight to the deep unconscious mind. Covering that over with certain types of music and certain types of nature sounds that have been slowed down in order to awaken the deeper parts of the unconscious mind. Because all of our experiences in nature have been good ones. It's the vacation time when I get away from it all and go out into nature and breathe a big sigh of relief. If I can capture that with 3D realistic recordings of nature sounds, so the brain is tricked into thinking I'm really there, and then slow those down so that only the unconscious mind can recognize it, bury it in a musical soundtrack that lends itself for an altered experience, build brainwave entrainment into that so that I am scientifically transformed into an open state, and the deep unconscious mind is being awakened through pattern recognition of these nature sounds slowed down so only it can recognize them. I'm stacking the deck in my favor for a transformational outcome, whether it be for healing or expanded states of consciousness and deepened states of meditation. But it's the power of music. And as essentially, music is simply relationships of vibrational frequencies mathematically. That we have the concept of a fundamental tone, the key of the music, say the key of the music is A. And then octaves of A are all the same note, but at different speeds. 440 middle A and 220 an octave below, and 110 and 55 and 440 and 880, and all of those octaves are A. And then we have the harmonic thirds and the harmonic fifths and the harmonic sevenths, these fractional relationships of 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 and 4 to 5, and these kind of fractions relationships between a fundamental and a third and a fifth or a seventh or a ninth, those relationships are called harmonics, and that's what chords are made of. So when we look at the black and white keys on the piano back there, we hit them in, we hit the one note like C, and then 2 notes over is a third, and 2 notes over is a fifth, and that's a chord. That's C major. And, as it turns out, these are old ideas. These ideas spun from Pythagoras and the Pythagorean school. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't there before. It's just that people didn't understand that it was a thing that you could codify, that you could figure out, that there was laws involved here. Pythagoras is the place where that all came together. There had been musicians for, thousands of years, all the way back to Egypt and all the way back into prehistory. But it was Pythagoras that started to understand that there was a mathematical relationship between tones and frequencies. And fractional relationships had to do with harmonies, and harmonies had to do with music. And then, that naturally began his awareness that nature itself seemed to be arranged in the same kind of harmonic intervals that he saw in strings on some kind of an instrument. Remember, Pythagoras started out with the monochord, this single string strung on a neck with a tuning peg, called a monochord. Mono meaning one string. And this neck had measurement divisions at exactly 1/2 and 1/3 and 1/5 and 1/7 and 1/9, so that now if he tightened this string up to some value, and let's say that it's 200 hertz. Of course, you have to remember that back in those days, back in Pythagoras' day, there was no possible way of knowing what note a string was tuned to or what vibrational frequency it was tuned to. So he's going to tune it up to something. Doesn't actually matter what it is. But it's unlikely that it was any kind of value that you could put a number on, like 440 or 100 hertz or anything. That unfortunately throws out the window the claims that, Pythagorean tuning, that, it was in esoteric circles, Pythagoras has supposedly found the tuning frequency of the universe, the key note of the universe. And so if you tuned your instruments to that key, then all the harmonic ratios that spun from that with chords and everything else would be in tune with the universe itself and cause an extra effect of some kind that would tap you into the cosmic symphony. And as time went on, whatever that was, if it's even true, was lost to history. And mankind has been searching for it ever since, which brings us to the current atmosphere of all kinds of different claims that people are making that we've bypassed the era of what I might call mature spiritual scrutiny. That the a part of the mind that looks at things and doesn't just swallow things whole, but digs deeper to find out if it might be real or not. Not quite skepticism. It's objective inquiry. It's not swallowing things until you investigate a bit more. As a faculty, and as a spiritual faculty. There at one point I became aware that somebody was making claims that they had rediscovered the key of the universe that Pythagoras had talked about. So I was all on it. I wanted to know. I mean, I was hoping that was so. Please show me. How did you find this? How did you discover this? This is one of the great discoveries of all time. That's the concept of retuning from 440 to 432 hertz. That 432 has magical properties, and went into a deep dive of a year and a half, which brought me to a Facebook sort of forum headed up by the guy who is making those claims, Jamie Buttriff. And for my scientific mind, I couldn't find what I was looking for. Not that I don't believe it might be so, but just it couldn't satisfy my mind. All of the scientific evidence that traces back the significance of 432 didn't really lead anywhere, except perhaps with some numerology references. And the one thing I did find out is that back in Europe, when when the music guilds in different countries, a composer couldn't have his music played in any other country except for his own, because every country had its own tuning scales. So there was a great push all throughout Europe, and eventually into the United States as well, to come up with a standardized tuning for middle A, for the middle A key, so that everybody's composing could be done at the same time. Everybody could be heard. And the debate, each country came up with what it wanted. The only reference that I could find to 432 was Vienna, the heart and soul of music. So that was a good mark. It was an opera guild. Now, in those days, the opera guild was pushing for the orchestras to retune themselves to the easiest note to sing of the opera singer. And of course, that's not going to happen, because retuning a whole orchestra every single time with a different singer is like an impossibility. So they polled all the different opera singers to find out what was the consensus vote of the opera singers of a sort of a standardized bell curve of what's the easiest note for most to sing. That's why they were pushing for 432. Now, there is something to be said for the idea that ultimately, from the esoteric standpoints, that when I sing a mantra, that or Om, me personally, I sit, I meditate, I get to this very deep space, and out of that space of balance, I blow my breath out and make a sound. That means that sound is coming from that state of balance. And ultimately, from the esoteric traditions, that should be the easiest note for me to sing, the easiest resonance where everything is most relaxed. That should be my note. And there's, a project on the shelf that we've got, that we're using electronic means. We're using advanced medical monitors that can see your autonomic nervous system on a computer screen and see if you're running a fight or flight response all the time, and collapse that vicious cycle back to zero stress in the system. The most stress reduced and relaxed that you can possibly be. So I would think that that should align, with esoteric traditions of the fundamental frequency that balances your nervous system at its core and balances all your systems around that should be very close to the easiest note for you to sing as well, right? There's a good project we haven't quite done yet. So I thought that the Opera Guild was onto something, but aside from that, I could never really find the evidence scientifically that I needed to 100% convince me that that's a real thing, and that we should change our tuning scale from 440, which is sort of an arbitrary value, which I also don't agree with. But as a musician, I don't conform to any of those scales. That, if I'm entraining you to a 5 hertz theta frequency, then I'm going to multiply that 5 hertz. 5 becomes 10, becomes 50, becomes 20, 40, and 40 hertz now becomes, as I go up, my A is going to be an octave of the brain entrainment frequency that I'm entraining you to. So I am with electronic instruments. I can tune it anything I want. My fundamental note can be retuned just with a little slider or typing in a number. It's not a big problem. So I don't conform necessarily to A440 or A432 or A anything. My A floats related to the entrainment frequency I'm entraining you to. So my scales are all my own, depending on where we're going with you as an experience. But the bigger picture that immediately started to come to the mind of Pythagoras is that these divisions of octaves and harmonics that make music, that make chords pleasing, are also the kind of thing that nature is using in planetary orbits and scales of how nature grows flowers and wave structures on the ocean and stuff like that. It was sort of everywhere. The musical harmonic nature of reality itself, built around the same principles that he was seeing in music. This concept that the music of the spheres, where the planets fall into these stable orbits around the sun, but these orbital places that they fall into are structured mathematically according to music theory. And when we go into the atomic scale, we see the same kind of thing happening in the periodic table, where we have 7 divisions. The periodic table marches in columns that go this way and marches in columns that go this way. And these columns are 7 columns. That's 1 octave. And as the structure of the atoms march across, the structure of the atom itself is based on the 5 platonic solids that Plato talked about, the primal archetypal forms, the tetrahedron and the dodecahedron and the octahedron. Those form the basic structures of the atoms in the periodic table. And as they march this way, they go up by octave and harmonic ratios. The orbital patterns of the nucleus in the center, and the electrons that are spinning in 3 different shells, they're orbital trajectories that are spherical. That the electron will always fall within these preset distances from the nucleus, and those distances are also based on the same laws of harmonics. Not only the music of the spheres, but the music of the atoms. And the music of the atoms combined together into compounds. That means the compound is a chord. And the more elements involved in creating a compound, the richer that chord is. And then, of course, that's what makes you and me. So we are a chord. We are a vibrational frequency of mathematical relationships that hark straight back to the Pythagorean theorems. That is the basis of modern music. The Cosmic Symphony, analogies between sound wave patterns and gravitational wave oscillations in shaping the universe. Not just me saying this. The Cosmic Symphony, analogies between sound wave patterns, blah, blah. I mean, what a mind blower that for that statement to even be there. Special report, the Cosmic Symphony. New observations of the cosmic microwave background radiation show that the early universe resounded with harmonious oscillations. So, concept of the Big Bang, and as it spreads out and cools, then the primitive atoms that first began to form out of that primordial hot soup, where it cooled to a point where something could coalesce. The first thing to coalesce was hydrogen, helium, and then lithium. And then it cooled more and they could combine together. And now we're off to the races. And next thing you've got is stars being formed and galaxies starting to form, and stars now reach old age and implode and explode. And what comes out of that is the heavier elements of the periodic table. That means that your body is made of star stuff, of exploding stars. That's where all that stuff comes from. That once it reaches that stage of evolution of the cosmos, then it becomes possible later on for life to appear, because we've got all the basic building blocks of heavier elements that we can make things out of, like carbon and iron and stuff like that. The origins of the universe, at some point, had music in its heart from the very beginning as a pattern, a primordial pattern. Now we can analyze this cosmic microwave background radiation, because it's still got the resonance characteristics from the Big Bang from the very beginning, the ripple patterns that come out from these ripples. So we've got this explosion in the continuum, and there's a three-dimensional spherical ripple that comes out, just like dropping a pebble in the water, and you see the concentric rings of ripples coming out across the water. Turn that into 3D, and the pebble is the Big Bang, and we have these ripples that come out. And the ripples have ripples, and those have ripples, and they're harmonic ripples and octave ripples. And as the ripples extend, they start to interact, and the next thing you've got is multiple ripples with overlapping each other, and some are, amplifying each other, and some are phase canceling each other. So now we've got patterns, and those patterns are the kind of thing that we see in these pictures of the background radiation, where you can see that there are spaces. These blue zones are more phase canceled areas, and these are augmenting areas, but the ripple patterns are becoming clear. They have these massive patterns that start to form in the universe, these cosmic highways where galaxies seem to coalesce on lines similar to the sand on a Chladni plate with vibration frequencies come through it. Everything coalesces into these patterns. These lines appear. They're not actual lines. They're vibrating sand particles that are attracted to a certain zone based on how the ripple of the metal plate is moving in relation to that particular frequency. But we see the same thing in the cosmos, where the Big Bang comes out, things start to cool, and we end up at this zone here, the cosmic background microwave radiation. And out of that, things coalesce into the galaxies, and here we are today. We can hear what that sounds like. It sounds like sort of static on a sort of channel 13 that doesn't pick anything up, cosmic background radiation. So we can sort of hear what's going on there if we, hang on, I'm going to pop something up here. Let's go there. Here's a recording of the cosmic background radiation. Check this out. It's not just white noise. There's fluctuations in it, as we can see. There's fluctuations here. These are more quiet zones and more loud, noisy zones. We can hear those fluctuations there. Sort of listening to that as a meditation track becomes trippy after a while. Kind of an interesting thing to try. The background radiation. But the background radiation is lumpy. It's filled with vibrational frequencies that are stacked together as these octave and harmonic relationships to each other. And what spins from that is coalesced things like galaxies of millions of stars. And within galaxies are planetary systems around a sun, which fall into these harmonic ratios of orbital trajectories and stuff like that. From the very first moment of the Big Bang, when these ripples sent out into the universe, they're clear that there's fundamental waves and harmonics and overtones. They're all mixed together. The sound spectrum of the early universe had overtones, much like musical instruments. You blow into a pipe, sound corresponds to a wave with maximum air pressure in blue at the mouthpiece and maximum rarefication where they phase cancel at the end. But the sound also has a series of overtones with shorter wavelengths that are integer fractions of the fundamental wavelength. This is Pythagoras. The wavelengths of the first, second, and third overtones are 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, on and on. This is cosmic stuff. These are sound waves that are, hundreds of light years peak to peak, slowly moving out. And the speed of that slowness compared to us is, millions of lifetimes. So we can't see it. It's frozen for us. From the time scale of the universe, there's ripples moving out. There's sound waves moving out. And they're exhibiting all the things that Pythagoras was seeing in the universe in micro scale around where we are. Harmonics, overtones, octaves, the music of the spheres, the music of the cosmos, the symphony, where we have fundamentals and octaves and harmonic ratios. And when you look out on the universe and you see a galaxy out there, the galaxies are not just flat like we see them in the pictures. They're riding on a crest here. There's a galaxy that's riding on a crest. That means the galaxy is actually bent as it follows the contour of these contour ridges. And there was a scientific experiment done not too long ago that showed that to be true. That Andromeda, our closest neighbor galaxy, um, when you look at it with, the James Webb Telescope, it's curved. It's curving along the wave that's moving through the universe. These invisible waves to us, but they're sound waves of titanic size, playing a chord, playing the music of the universe. And the universe, we keep throwing this word around, and we sort of in the back of our minds, because this crowd who's here with me, us, we're an educated crowd. We're an educated crowd scientifically and spiritually. We already have seen some of the videos of just how unimaginably big the universe really is. Periodically, it's a cool thing to go back and revisit that every once in a while. And of course, you know me, that's where we're going to go right now. Just as a refresher, to take 5 minutes and just remind ourselves our place in things, that just how big it all is and where we are in it. Just to give ourselves a little bit of eating some humble pie and realizing that the whole universe can exist without you in it. That, remember, in the second law of thermodynamics, it states that the universe is complete as it is. Nothing can be subtracted or added to what is. What is what is. And every particle of what's here is required for the whole puzzle thing to hold together. If you take one piece of puzzle out, the whole thing starts to collapse. So the smallest particle at a Planck scale is a necessary puzzle piece that holds it all together. That means that you and me, that each one of us is a puzzle piece, and we belong. We're designed, we're created to be here and fit our little puzzle piece into the continuum. And we're important. The whole universe hinges on you and your next decision, on the thing that you do next, and what you do with your life. Everything is hinging on it. And then you realize that you are so small, that the universe is so big, that if it's infinite, every place is center. You're the center of the universe and everything you do. And then when you get into quantum physics, where the whole universe is just a projection of a collective unconscious mind, which is why we're here with the mind link thing, that it all just becomes mind numbing after a while. But let's take a little trip into the bigness of things. How's that for perspective? It's trippy, I have to say. It's very trippy. I love seeing those things because it sort of reminds me, brings me back to the scale of things that where I am. There's other ones that are out there which, after it goes to the furthest of the far, it comes back to you and starts digging inwards. And it goes through atomic scales and quantum scales and down to the Planck length scales. And from that scale, your body is as big as the largest part of the universe that we just saw. So, in the scale of things, from the largest of the large to the smallest of the small, we're dead center in the middle. And from a standpoint of quantum physics, our deep universal mind, where we're all connected together, the mind field that we all share, is where the origin of all of this comes from. The mathematics and the projections and the creation of the movie that we're in, is what we are creating someplace under the hood. By consensus vote, we all decide that this is the way it's all going to be. And then it becomes so. All of these harmonics and overtones and all the rest of it that we're talking about flows through everything, flows from everything into everything. It's sort of a Zen koan. Flows through us, flows through every cell in your body, flows through all your atoms, flows into your thoughts, flows into your consciousness. We're part of it, part of the dance, part of the music. Pythagorean longings and cosmic symphonies, the musical rhetoric of string theory, and the sonification of particle physics. Interesting. Thus, Johannes Kepler expressed in 1620 his deep-felt commitment to the search for Pythagorean harmonies in the planetary spheres. Yeah, and a lot of people have been thinking about this for a long time. This Pythagorean harmonies, doesn't matter what the original string is tuned to, it's the mathematical relationships and harmonic values between resonating structures that fall into these mathematical harmonic patterns. Astronomy, self-organizing systems and planetary physics, harmonic resonances of planet and moon orbits. So the moons that orbit around planets are just like miniatures of the planets orbiting around suns, falling into the same mathematical orbital patterns. Frontiers of neuroscience, scaling, mirror symmetries, and musical consonances among the distances of the planets of the solar system. Planetary orbital resonances create harmonious intervals when the orbital periods of two or more celestial bodies align in simple numerical ratios, like 2 to 1 or 3 to 2. This phenomenon, known as orbital resonance, results in a gravitational dance where the planets' orbits influence each other. These resonances can be visualized as a rhythmic alignment of planets forming a cosmic symphony. Orbital resonance. Planets or moons are in orbital resonance when their orbital periods are simple ratios of whole numbers. That right there is Pythagoras. This means that after a certain number of orbits of one planet, another planet will have completed a corresponding number of orbits. Examples, Neptune and Pluto. These are in a 3 to 2 resonance, meaning Neptune completes 3 orbits for every 2 of Pluto's. Jupiter's moons, Io, Europa, and Ganymede, they are in a 4-2-1 resonance, with Io completing 4 orbits for every 2 of Europa and every 1 of Ganymede. So it goes deeper. That for planets with more than one moon, the moons fall into harmonic relationships in their orbital speeds, in their completion of an orbital period. The harmonious intervals created by orbital resonances are not just mathematical relationships, they're also visible as patterns in the alignment of planets and moons. The concept of planetary orbits creating musical harmonies has a long history dating back to Pythagoras and Kepler. While planets don't actually produce sound, the rhythmic patterns of their orbits can be translated into sound using techniques like sonification, as demonstrated by astronomers at the European Southern Observatory. Kepler, 1619, this guy, wrote the Harmonices Mundi, his treatise on what the previous statements have just been talking about, the music of the spheres, the orbital distances, the speed of planetary planets going around the sun in relation to the other planets, forming periodicity that's based on the laws of harmonics and overtones. Moons around planets fall into the same kind of math. And as we see the orbitals of electrons around the nucleus of an atom fall into the same kind of mathematical harmonic relationships. When I was in my 20s, in the late 60s, early 70s, I got deeply into Indian music and started learning sitar. Sitar is a big gourd, a big hollow gourd with 7 strings on the top of these big curved frets, which makes it easy to pull a string to another note. But as you can see here, there's a bunch of tuning pegs on the side. There's 13 tuning pegs on the side, and way up at the top there are 7 tuning pegs for the main top strings, but there are these 13 strings underneath, tuned to harmonic ratios of the 7 strings on top, depending on what type of raga you're going to be playing, because there's different tuning sequences for morning ragas and afternoon ragas and evening ragas and celebratory ragas. There's a continual dance between the tuning of these harmonic strings and the 7 ones on top. So it may be that I'm playing a certain melody up here and I pull a string to a new note, and it causes a harmonic resonance of these 13 strings, or various strings within the 13 that sing out all on their own from sympathetic resonance. This is a sympathetic resonance instrument, but its design is based on cosmic principles that Indian musicians saw operating in the cosmos, spiritual music. And while this whole thing is going on, there's another instrument, the tambura, that looks something like this, except it's only got 4 strings and no strings underneath. That's the drone instrument, the tambura. And the tuning of those strings is related to the master note tuning of this instrument, where the tonic note is 1 string on the tambura, and the next 2 strings are that same note 1 octave higher, and the 4th string is a harmonic 5th. And there are certain mathematics about the harmonic 5th to the fundamental that we see exemplified in nature all over the place, in the design of flowers and the design of patterns in nature all over the place. This harmonic 5th relationship to a fundamental is profound. And in music, it's deeply recognizable at an unconscious level. The idea that that when we're playing this drone in the background and the melodies are dancing around that drone, and certain frequencies in the music are going to cause these harmonic strings to spin out harmonies, makes Indian music some of the closest music to true spirituality, exemplifying the mathematics of the music of the cosmos. We can see here that these strings on top of these big frets, and then all the strings underneath that are underneath the frets where you can't touch them. Sometimes you can go down and you can strum them if you wish, but the real idea is to hit these various strings or to pull the string to a new note and cause these to sing out on their own. Which brings us to string theory. An attempt to explain the fundamental forces of the universe that don't seem quite to fit together. So we have the 4, currently in physics, it's been going on for a long time. The standard view of the universe is that there are 4 master forces. 3 of them are in the quantum realm, and they govern things in the atom. There's the strong force that holds the atom together, that holds the nucleus and the electron cloud together. And then there's the weak force that holds the nucleus together. the particles in the nucleus. And then there's the grand electromagnetic force, which, for and still in most circles, is considered to be the whole ball game. Everything is made of photons and light particles. That electromagnetism is the rule of the universe. That the total electromagnetic spectrum, where down here we've got radio waves and television waves, and then we've got more energetic waves as we go higher, and someplace in there is X-rays, and up here is narrow bandwidth of color frequencies, angstrom frequencies, millions of cycles per second. Then we get more energetic than that, and we get into gamma rays and cosmic rays and all that kind of stuff. That's the total electromagnetic spectrum that science considers all of this is made of. But nobody seems to be taking into account that there's another force in the universe aside from electromagnetism, and that's sound waves. Sound is not electromagnetic. It's a mechanical energy wave moving through a medium at a certain frequency. Pure energy with force, with push. And the resonance and the vibration all comes from that. The sound part of the yin-yang is where heat comes from. Vibrating things create heat. So the whole idea of the second law of thermodynamics, thermo, is related really to sound waves. And as we're seeing, the Big Bang itself was a giant bang, a sound that rippled out with a sound wave. And as sound waves interact, it's possible that that created a phenomenon called sonoluminescence, where sound waves crisscross, create a pressure packet that causes a bubble to form, to collapse, and that cavitation of collapse creates a star. In a lab, it's called a star in a jar. Yeah. So you can take a spherical container filled with water and put two transducers, tune the tone to the radius of the circle, of the sphere, and point all the force at one point in the center, which creates a bubble that collapses, and that collapse causes photons, causes light, and the light is brighter than the sun, and it's hotter than the sun. And then that collapses and explodes a new one. And it all goes so fast that you can't see the flicker. Call it a star in a jar. It's possible the universe itself is how that works. In other words, the Big Bang itself could be two titanic, unimaginably large, universally large sound waves colliding together, and the original Big Bang was the cavitation event of an explosion of light that came from sound. In the beginning was the Word, was the sound, Nada Brahma. The world is sound. At the deepest quantum scale, to finish that thought, the inconsistency is that gravity doesn't fit there. Gravity is the fourth force that governs titanically large bodies and orbital planets and stuff like that. But they can't find evidence of gravity at a quantum scale. So there's these two things. Now, my take on that is that the three forces govern electromagnetism, and the fourth force governs gravity, governs sound waves. They are two. Of course, it's not going to fit together. They're complementary. They're not part of the same thing. But string theory was a way to try to harmonize all of those together, where at the smallest of the smallest scales, down at the quantum field, the smallest of the small are actually resonating strings, or not actual strings, but string-like structures that are in a state of resonance. And as the strings begin to resonate at different frequencies, it forms the strings into different shapes, just like the sand on a Chladni plate, that different frequencies make different patterns. And those patterns look like string lines forming geometric pattern shapes, mandalas. But when you look close enough, there's no string there. There's dancing sand particles coalescing to a place formed by the sound waves, nodes and antinodes, places where sound waves reinforce themselves and where they phase cancel out. So, in this cosmic idea of string theories where everything is made from vibration, these sort of amorphous string-like structures that resonate at different ratios, but the ratios of how they resonate together all are based on the same idea. Music theory, octaves and harmonics of primordially small quantum level strands that are in a state of resonance, that weave themselves through the texture fabric of the smallest of the small down at the Planck length, and then compound themselves and stack themselves together based on the laws of harmonies and octaves and relationships like that, straight out of Pythagoras, form the basic structuring of all of reality. As they stack deeper and deeper and more tightly woven, it becomes like the loom of the harmonics of the song of the universe, which eventually becomes you and me. Basically stacked, vibrating resonances, almost an infinite level of stacking and weaving that is so dense that it looks like it's solid. But we all know that that's not the case. Nothing is solid. It's all vibrating resonances, following the laws that we see in music theory. In physics, string theory is a theoretical framework in which the point-like particles of particle physics are replaced by one-dimensional objects called strings. String theory describes how these strings propagate through space and interact with each other, and they interact in these harmonic relationships that make chords, that make music. Could consciousness come down to the way things vibrate? How do synchronized vibrations add to the mind-body question? Consciousness itself is formed out of these chords, out of these stacking of harmonic relationships of vibrations. Or the other way around, that consciousness itself is creating the song, not a Brahma, that at the core of all of it is Brahman, the ultimate consciousness of all things, all time scales, all size scales, all harmonies, all octaves, the fundamental sound, the Om, creates it all. Vibrational thoughts, how the brain acts as a universal tuner. Someplace at the center of all of it is an idea. This is straight from the Upanishads. And the idea is all of this. It's a grand musical score of the idea of, according to the ancient traditions, the idea, the central idea, is love. That at the core of it is love. Which brings us to the biggest mystery of all, which is why? Why did the universe divide into bilateral symmetry? I got bilateral symmetry, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 hemispheres, 2 sides of my body, right, left side of the spinal cord, right, left nostril. I mean, bilateral symmetry seems to be the thing for some reason. And deeper into that is the bilateral symmetry of the yin-yang in its most cosmic value, that in the ancient Indian traditions of the oldest texts in Sanskrit, that the godhood, when it went from infinite idea into idea become manifest, at the first instant of that manifestation of that idea became male and female in tight embrace at the moment of sexual orgasm, and then fall apart. And this concept of why the universe chose to have male and female, that this relationship of each one has a blind spot that only the other one can fill. The idea of the yin yang with, you know, a white one and a black one, and the white one has a black particle in it and the black one has a white particle in it, that each one of them has a blind spot that can only be filled by the other one. And it can only happen when they come together. And when they do come together, what happens? A baby is born. New life springs from this. It's the great mystery of love. What's it all about? Because we're talking about the musical nature of the universe, and I'm a musician and a composer, and many of you are as well. I recognize that. I realize that. That one of the things about music, and one of the things about, you know, the kind of mindset that music comes from, or the mindset that appreciates the musical nature of everything, is music itself. And so this whole concept and idea that we've been talking about, that at the core of all of this is an idea, and it's really an emotional idea, and the emotion is love. That's what pulls all this out from the grand esoteric traditions. That sort of brings us to a cool video. So here we go. We're going to have another 3.5-minute video of music from a cool group that I stumbled across. And I'm sure that of all the people that are out there, some of you have seen this video. For those who have not, fasten your seatbelt. This is cool. It's about what we've been talking about. So here we go. We're going to pull this one up. And make it play. Oops. Sorry. Oh. I'm sort of losing it here. Okay, let's get your act together, Jeffrey. We're going to do it this way. Yes, I think that's better. Put your headphones on, because here we go.
And 3, 2, 1, 10. Robot. Music.
Maybe that stop recording.
Well, yeah, that pretty much says it all. I got to tell you, just think about it. That was one take, start to finish. Think how many takes they had to take to get that right all the way through, all the way to the end, without making a single mistake. Not bad. Very cool. And the message, just what we're talking about. So, yeah, I'm sort of thrilled by what I saw there. Let me get myself back together here. So it sort of reset my PowerPoint back to 0, so I got to get it back. So yeah, when we talk about at the core idea of all things, particularly in the human sphere, all this stuff in your life, the most important things, it's the kind of thing that happens when, as I've gotten older, I've realized that my life has gone through a series of phases, of chapters. There is the chapter of my youth, and the chapter of my teens, and the chapter of my 20s, and the chapter of my 30s, and At each one of those points, some clear demarcation shifted. Something new arrived in me, in my experience, and in what I chose to do with this new chapter in my life. Things would show up, the things would shift, that it was all bigger than me, that then there's my 40s and something else, and then there's my 50s and something else, and there's my 60s and something else, and now I'm in my 70s, and I'm heading towards 80s, and in my 70s, 77, part of it is the bird's eye view keeps coming back, the bird's eye view of those epochs, and how that is a pattern that we all share, that at a certain point when you look and realize that there are more years behind you than there are ahead of you, there's a time dilation thing that begins to happen where everything becomes more precious. And out of that distills what floats to the top is the things that are more important than other things. It's why, at a certain point I looked in the mirror and thought, I think I paid the dues. I have the right now to fire people out of my space. I always had that right. I just couldn't see it clearly now. But now I begin to see how important it is to surround yourself with the good things of life, that pick and choose, that not anybody just gets to be in your field, that the people who are hangers on and energy vampires who are there hoping that you can help them make their life work for free don't serve you anymore. You begin to yearn to be surrounded by like-minded people with similar understandings and similar yearnings, where we are here to help one another and not use one another as a way to make our life work. I've already gotten to the place in my life where my life works, that I already understand that. I've done that work. Here I am doing my thing. Now I'm looking for partners to help that thing grow bigger, because now I've reached a point where the thing that I am doing is part of a bigger work that many other people are also participating in trying to make happen. And now it becomes obvious that each person that shows up in my field has got a piece of the puzzle, that when we start to fit that together, something bigger and grander is being created by all of us, that each of us has to reach a point where our talents are secure, and now the only way to move forward is with each other. That's the new grand foundation of love. It all boils down to who do you love and who loves you back. It forms a harmonious network. It forms its own music, the music of the heart. What is it here that we are here to create? What kind of world would we love to have? We want a world that's filled with love and community and happiness and self-support with each other. That's the kind of world that we're looking for, that at the core and the heart of it is an idea of the heart, an idea of love. And something about the core idea of love has to do with music, because music is the language of the emotions. That music has the power to elevate me or to darken me, that it's a grand harmony, it's a big chord, it's love itself is a song. And that song can communicate through special structures, which is what the whole chakra system is about, and the crown chakra is all about. It's our communication network. It's the doorway of where it all fits together. In the center of the pineal gland, the gland associated with the crown chakra, are these calcite crystals. And as I've talked before, these crystals, crystalline structures in the universe have a special place. It's a subset that's unique. Crystalline structures have an atomic structure of a lattice, and the lattice has the ability to bend and hold that shape, memorize things. The crystals have the power to hold memories, to hold information. And in the old days when I was a kid, a crystal radio set had a crystal, a quartz crystal like this guy, that powered it. That if you put pressure on a crystal, the thing about a crystal with a crystalline structure, it has piezoelectric properties. I put pressure on it, torque on it, it generates an electrical pulse. Your whole body is set up that way. Everything in the system, that the fluid in your body, body is 70% water and brain is 80% water. It's not just regular water, it's colloidal water, it's biological water. And that water has special properties. It balances on the edge, razor edge of colloidal water on the one hand and piezoelectric liquid crystal on the other. And what shifts it from one to the other is torque, pressure. What creates pressure? Sound waves. Pressure is the domain of sound. Pure energy moving through a medium with a pressure wave of a certain frequency. That's what makes it. So when I speak to you and my sound waves come out and hit your body, it torques the cells. The cells are chock full of microtubules made of what? Crystalline structure with piezoelectric properties. There's a microskeletal structure inside all the cells and connects all the cells together. So the sound waves distort, create a piezoelectric discharge in the shape of the sound waves and sweep it through all of my body structures. And all of the structures in my body are electromagnetic. My nervous system, my brain, ions flowing, chi energy in the meridians, it's ions, it's electromagnetic. The blood with red blood cells, and inside the red blood cell is hemoglobin, and hemoglobin has got iron particles which attract oxygen, and iron is the only element on the periodic table that has magnetic properties. So magnet in motion creates electrical fields. So all of this whole system is geared towards sound waves and pressure and torque to activate the piezoelectric discharge waves that take the shape of the sound waves that are shooting from my mouth and the sound waves that are coming from the music of the universe, is continually torquing my body and joining me in the electromagnetic dance of the universe, right to my core, right to the core of my deepest unconscious mind, which is listening to that song. It's a way, the tale that I told of Dr. Ramurti Mishra, the guru and the medical doctor and the neurosurgeon and the Sanskrit scholar who was leading the chants of the sacred verses of the sutras of Patanjali in Sanskrit, and we would sing it back, and he would sing it, and we would sing it, and you have a transformational experience. And somebody asked, what's the translation? He says, there's no translation necessary. Those sound waves go straight into the deepest unconscious mind, which listens and hears it directly. This part doesn't need to be involved. Science of vibration. In this little gland, right here, pineal gland, that's where these crystals are. Hundreds of thousands of these little micro-miniaturized crystals, because this pineal gland is the size of a grain of rice. So all these thousands of little crystals inside there are called brain sand because they're so small. But each one of them is a little crystal that can hold memory, and it can become the crystal of a crystal radio set that's in the center of your brain, which means you can tune it to different channels of the universe. Like, it's all connected. it's all connected through harmonics and overtones, through the nature of vibration in the universe that sets itself in certain patterns. We can communicate to the network. And we don't necessarily have to stand alone in that. Each of us has our own private channel. But we can enter into a specific channel. We can tune the channel where we all come together, where the eye, the third eye within all of us, goes into a hall of mirrors where we can see each other from an infinite number of angles, that we can see how the universe is set together in these musical harmonic relationships, where we realize that that the real power is when we are in this together and dancing together. And it's the dance of love, the dance of bringing love into the world, of expanding the love for what we're doing, for what we're participating, for the universe, for each other. Creating a world that is sharing and magnifying the love, the song. And that's why we're here, to do that with headphones. So with that being said, headphones please, and fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. Welcome back. Thank you all for being here with me this week. A reminder, I did come out with a new album just recently. It's the latest technology and research into sleep. I did have Delta 1, the Delta 1.0, which came out long, long ago when Shay, my son, was still an infant and wouldn't sleep. So I created the first sleep track that put him to sleep. That would have been 1991, 1992, somewhere around in there. And then a number of years later, new research came out into sleep, and I created a second one that's Delta Sleep 2.0. And then that has been a long, long, long time until finally I created just recently 3.0 based on all the latest research in sleep research and new developments that I have made as an artist and a musician and a composer. And I produced a limited number of them on CD. And some of those are signed editions. You can see my signature there. Just in case that could be worth something someday, you know. We also created a cool poster. It's a cool poster. And this is available as a download now. It's finally out. It's not available as a CD. The CDs are part of a giveaway. In order to enter into the possibility of getting a signed copy of a CD and a poster with a signed poster, you see, enter in by going to the scientificsounds.com website. And there is a big banner there, and right under the banner, there's a little thing that says sign up for our newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get notifications through the newsletter of the drawing and how you enter and how you have a chance of winning. So thank you all very much for being here with me. It's always a blessing and a joy. And I'm going to leave the chat open for a few more minutes, 10 minutes, and we'll move over to the Discord channel, and we can talk there. Thank you all.
I'm a terrible note taker. My notes look like doctor's handwriting mixed with abstract art. And my type notes,